Okay, I'm just going to say it. Moco is going to be Supercell's next global game. Maybe not like the next one, but it's going global. I'm convinced. Now, this isn't official news or anything like that. This is my opinion. But after playing through 2 weeks of the beta, I feel very confident in saying that just like a fact because the game is just that good. I'm not saying the game is ready to go now. It still needs some improvements. We're going to be talking about a lot of the things that I think they need to improve for the game to go global. But I'm convinced it's not about if it goes global, it's about when. So we'll talk about when I think the game could possibly go global. But before that, I want to review the game as I experienced it in the 2-week beta and then talk about some of the things that the game needs to be improved. Now, I promise this video is not going to be me just raving about the game the entire time. But you're gonna have to bear with me for a little bit of that because I am so excited about this game. I haven't been this excited about a Supercell game since Brawl Stars. And I hate saying that about Clash Mini. I'm sorry, Clash Mini fans. I stand by Clash Mini. I think it's going global as well, but Moco just speaks to my heart. I love playing it so much. Maybe it's because I'm a massive MMORPG fan. Like, I've played so many of them. In fact, I am actively playing old school RuneScape right now as I'm recording this. So maybe my opinion's a little bit skewed, but I'm so hyped. And that is after I have played through the entire beta. I spent hours grinding for upgrades that wouldn't even matter because progress was going to be deleted after the beta ended, and I knew that from the very beginning. I legit had such a hard time putting the game down. Like, Moco, it's phenomenal. I love it. And one of the things I loved the most was just the progression experience. And that's something that not a lot of MMORPGs do a great job at nailing. I'm not saying that Moco's is perfect, but let's talk about it. I loved the progression experience a lot. My intention with this beta was to reach max level and unlock every piece of gear and upgrade them all to the max level. Now, that is a very important point because it makes me kind of biased in the sense that my whole goal as soon as I started playing it was to reach max level. So that actually changed the way that I played it. I wasn't just like dabbling in it, seeing if I liked the game or not. I already knew I liked the game. So my goal was like max out as fast as possible. And because of that, progression felt super satisfying in a way that is pretty unlike any other game that I've played, which is funny because on the surface, it looks like most MMORPGs, right? You go kill a bunch of monsters, then upgrade your gear so that you can kill more monsters so you can upgrade your gear, so you can kill stronger monsters so that you can upgrade your gear, so you can kill them faster so you can upgrade your gear. Like, it's the same progression loop that I've experienced in so many different games. That's literally all it is. But the experience is completely different from other MMOs that I've played because of how farming actually works. When a monster is killed anywhere near you, you get credit for killing that monster even if you didn't do any damage to it all. Now, there is a perk to like doing a lot of damage because I think there's like a threshold. As long as you do this amount of damage, then you do get like a bonus amount of loot. But even if you don't even touch it, just being in the vicinity of an enemy will give you some loot. So that means you could be focusing on this monster over here, whereas somebody kills this other monster that's close to you and you still get it. I mean, I know that sounds like a simple concept, and it is, but it can lead to a profound social experience because killing monsters with other people leads to way more loot for everyone because the monsters just die so much faster. On the first day of beta, I started streaming with the intention of streaming until I no longer felt like I had the energy to keep streaming. Well, 9 hours later of streaming straight, which is a record for me, by the way. Like, I don't enjoy streaming for long periods of time because it's exhausting, but I streamed for 9 straight hours. That is telling of something, right? It was so fun because the looting experience with other people that were on the stream was just so enjoyable. We created like a massive death ball of players and just shredded through mobs like butter. Farming this way was insane. We just got so much loot. It was so much fun. And the funny thing is, I normally hate it when games force me to play with other people. I also hate it when they like strongly encourage you. So like most of the time, games don't do a good job at creating a social farming experience like Moco did. They just don't, even though they try all these things. And for some reason, it just felt different. I typically really enjoy playing MMOs solo, even though they're typically intended to be played with other players, but I never felt forced to play with other players. I just wanted to because it was more fun to do so. Like sometimes I would just invite everybody on my friends list to join me and to like come into a party, and then we would just go and farm. And if people wanted to join, they could. If they didn't want to, they didn't have to. It was really cool and it was super smooth. Like loading in, the fact that you could just follow somebody and just like log into where they are in the map at any given time is really cool. Now, my progression experience was probably very different than most other people's. And a big reason for that is the fact that I had the opportunity to try out all of the gear on the developer build before the beta went live. So I knew that I wanted to unlock all the gear, and that I also wanted to upgrade all of it, at least for the most part. What I did hear some feedback though is that people didn't feel particularly encouraged to upgrade more than one build though, and I do think that that's a problem. And I think that they need to figure out some way to encourage people to like try out everything in some way, and maybe that has to do with balance. I don't know how they can fix that. Either way, with that being said, I accepted every single friend request that was sent to me through the beta, so I had like 130 some odd friends, and about 45 to 50% of them did end up reaching the max level. I don't know if that's good numbers, and I don't know how well that compares to Moco's actual data, but considering how many hours it took me to reach max level, and considering the fact that tons of people stopped playing as soon as they learned that their progression was going to be deleted, I think that's pretty good. And I hope the developer team is taking that into consideration, because this is a game where the whole point of playing an MMORPG like this is to progress. And if you take that away by saying, oh yeah, progression's getting deleted after this. And so my biggest worry is that the developers will look at the data and be like, oh no, everybody's quitting our game, when really it's just because the game's not global yet. Like that, I hope they can recognize this. It's not like Brawl Stars, where Brawl Stars had a 1.5 year long beta and progression did actually persist. It's a very different experience here. Now, another really cool aspect about Moco's progression experience is that it works for hardcore players and casual players. As a hardcore gamer, one of my least favorite things about a lot of MMOs is that they like limit your progression behind energy or quests, and they make it like almost impossible for you to progress after you reach the level of content that you've unlocked for that day. It's really annoying. I don't like it. It's not good. It's limiting, not enjoyable. But for Moco, if you're a hardcore player, you could spend your whole day grinding and never run out of upgrades and unlocks to get. It's going to slow down, obviously, once you complete all of your missions, but there's always something that you can do to get a little bit more experience to help you get to your next level, which will then unlock more content for you. Despite being the highest level player on day one, I never ran out of progression to get, and I enjoyed the grind, honestly, the whole time. Well, okay, with the exception, sometimes it was annoying to have to find a specific resource that it was difficult to find, but that's you know, it was enjoyable. I had a lot of fun. I streamed for 9 hours and nobody was paying me to. I just wanted to. Now, a big reason for this was the fact that I knew that I was going to need tons of resources from every single monster if I was going to upgrade everything, right? Because I needed to kill everything, then I did so, and it was fun. I just farmed everything that came across my path. I think that people that were just trying to be picky and choosy about like, oh, I only want to build this way, so I have to only search for these specific things. I think that that could have been a frustrating player experience, because sometimes the particular monster that you need to farm to upgrade this one specific item for your current build is difficult to find, and that's annoying. But if you're just farming everything like I did, then you're going to run across everything anyway, and then you can just focus on the things that you're missing, and it's way more fun like that. So I think the game really could be improved in the aspect of like people that are trying to just build specific items or whatever. But anyway, that's not the point here. I genuinely felt rewarded for the time that I put into the game as a hardcore player who just grinded and grinded and grinded and tried. I think that I reached max level in like 5 days or something like that. I know that I wasn't the first, but there were not very many people at max level by the time I reached there. Like, maybe there were 20. I don't know. But as a hardcore player, it felt genuinely rewarding and exciting to just play all day, because I was able to unlock content before everybody else. Now, a big reason for this was their project system. Projects are essentially like massive quests that are supposed to be completed over the course of your entire account, right? You're not supposed to go and like do 300 million damage with this weapon on the first day. Like, it's not intended like that, but it allowed for the hardcore gamers to be able to do so. I really like the project system because as a hardcore player, I almost never ran out of content to do or progression gain. It was awesome. Now, I can't 100% speak as a casual player because I didn't play it casually, but at least on paper, I think that it's likely a good experience because of the missions that you get every 2 to 3 hours. You could store up to 10 or 15 of them, which meant that as long as you logged in every day, you could complete your missions in less than 20 minutes most of the time and then log right off. You wouldn't progress nearly as quickly as the people who are grinding 8 hours a day, but you'll get way more progression per hour than if you're grinding like a hardcore player, and you'll still be completing those projects passively for you like over time. So there will be time for you to catch up to the hardcore players when you actually have the time to play. And I love that. It honestly worked out really, really well. And I think that there's going to be a lot of freedom in how people play this. It feels like an MMORPG for everybody. Like, most MMOs are either targeted strictly at casual players or strictly at hardcore players. And because of that, they don't do very well. They're not fun in the long run because of that. But moco, I think, definitely has that potential. Now, an important thing to realize here, though, is that if you want to upgrade your gear as a casual player, you probably couldn't rely on just 20 minutes a day. And that might be an issue that the moco team could figure out a way to address. But yeah, I feel like on paper, it was a pretty good experience for a casual player on top of a hardcore player. I am curious to hear from some casual moco players. So if you were a player and you played it casually, then please drop a comment below and let me know how you felt the progression did. Like if you didn't have time to play it for hours a day, you know? Now, while the character progression felt pretty good, I'm not convinced that the weapon and gear progression or unlocking system is like the best that it could be. For the most part, I'm pretty fine with how you could upgrade your gear. It was not a bad system. It just didn't feel like the really exciting system that I've experienced in some other games. You just farm a bunch of monsters to get the right materials to upgrade them. It feels pretty good for the most part. Like there are some pain points, like the times that you have to fight a specific mob and you can't find them even though you're on the right map. That was really annoying, and that could definitely be improved somehow. Like if they could do that, I don't know how they do that, but like if they could, that would be very much appreciated. It's super annoying to try and like search for a specific troop that's just not spawning. It's annoying. But at its core, I'm good with the hunting specific monsters for specific upgrades aspect of the game. What felt kind of lackluster was actually how you unlock new weapons and abilities. Like I said, it wasn't awful. It just didn't feel like so exciting, which I know that they could nail down somehow. In fact, there's one aspect, I'm going to sound like a little bit contradicting myself here in a minute, but there's one aspect that I really liked, and that was the fact that you were guaranteed a new piece of gear or equipment when you first completed a specific raid or solo trial. And there were like solo trials that were very difficult to be able to beat. And once you did so, it felt very rewarding to immediately be like, boom, here's this brand new weapon. That's really cool. I hope that they could somehow maintain that experience. The experience of just like hitting your head against the wall over and over again and like slowly improving how you actually handle the fight to be able to beat the monster and unlock that new piece of equipment. That's really cool. And this is going to sound a little bit contradictory to what I just said, and also maybe a little bit of a hot take, but I actually think that it should be a bit harder to unlock new weapons and gadgets in some way, or at least to get like the best gear. Currently, the hardest weapons and gadgets are locked behind specific raids. And once you complete those raids, you're either guaranteed a new ride or the blueprint for that raid. So you are guaranteed to get the legendary weapons with either 1 or 2 completions of the raid. I don't know. The thing is that like it makes it so that everybody can unlock them, which is good and fun and exciting. And I want everybody to be able to unlock all of the gear. But because it's guaranteed, there's almost no sense of replayability to the raids. Like hardly at all, except to come back to the raids later on when your gear is upgraded and you could get faster clear times. But once you completed a raid and got the experience points that you knew you were going to be able to get at the current time, you just moved on and tried to farm other stuff. And the raids are one of the most exciting parts of the game, so it's really unfortunate that they didn't feel very repeatable, right? Another issue is the fact that the game is missing that super exciting moment of unlocking an ultra rare piece of equipment. Like the legendary gear didn't feel legendary because everybody got it for completing the same raid. And it was a cool and exciting moment, you know, if you did that with a group of people, but it just didn't feel like, you know, that moment in MMOs where you like get the newest legendary piece of gear and equipment. And it's like, you get that lucky drop and you're just like, oh my gosh, this completely changes how I'm going to play the game. Like that just didn't happen in moco. It didn't. And that's one of my favorite aspects of playing any MMO. So they need to incorporate that somehow. And I do have a suggestion on how to improve this. Now, my suggestion, it's not going to sound like crazy and genius or anything like that. It's very common in a lot of other MMOs, but my suggestion is to make it so that every weapon and gadget that you unlock always or mostly starts out as a common rarity, right? And they would unlock just as easily as they currently do. You just go and you beat the raid and then it gives it to you and you're like, boom, sweet, I unlocked the newest weapon. And there's that sense of accomplishment for actually clearing the raid for the first time because you do get a new weapon. But that weapon isn't going to be the best that it could possibly be. And I'm not talking about upgrading it. I'm talking about like its rarity, right? My concept here is that going back to completing those raids would then give you a small chance of giving you a higher rarity version of that weapon that you have already unlocked. Or maybe it drops a specific item that is required for you to upgrade it from common to epic, or I guess casual, and then from casual to professional, and then you have to complete a raid many times. There's a really small chance of getting that specific piece of gear or whatever to be able to upgrade it then to legendary, where it unlocks all of its awesome attributes and the highest stat buffs and stuff like that. Or maybe they do something else where like you have a common monster slugger, and then when it drops a casual monster slugger, then it just automatically transfers over in your power. I don't know how they do it, but there needs to be something in the game. And also to make for really exciting moments when you get that legendary piece of equipment that you've been really trying to get for a long time. Higher rarity gear would be stronger than the other ones, maybe just stat buffs or anything like that. Maybe the highest legendary rarity would further augment the ability in some way on top of those stat boosts. They could also reserve like a super rare rarity for max level raids to give players a reason to keep playing once they reach the max level, because max level is a really important discussion that we'll talk about later on. And we haven't talked about the different difficulties of raids quite yet, but they could make it so that hard and nightmare raids have a higher chance of giving you that higher rarity weapons than the standard level raids. Now, I don't want the game to have such ridiculous drop rates that are so absurdly high that you can, like, it's just unrealistic for you to get the best stuff. I would hope they would put some sort of a pity system in place, but this type of a system would add 2 improvements over the current system. First of all, it would add replayability to those raids by giving players a reason to come back to them. And second, it would allow for those super exciting moments when you unlock a new legendary gear that immediately boosts your account. And it does so without removing the excitement of unlocking a new weapon the first time you beat a raid. Now, there are also issues that come with this type of a progression system. I'm sure the developers that are watching this right now will already be thinking of them in their heads, like the fact that if you unlock a new piece of equipment and it's not legendary, but you already have a legendary piece of equipment, you might not want to actually play with the other one until you actually upgrade it. Like, there are issues with this system, but the core issue that I'm experiencing is a lack of replayability and a lack of really exciting moments in the game, right? If those 2 problems can be addressed, honestly, I don't really care how they do it. Well, I mean, I would care, but like, I think they would do a good job either way. Okay. This is a little bit of a topic jump. I want to talk about skill level in moco. Moco is very easy to pick up and play, like really easy. And that's because every single ability is fully automated to deal, I think, maximum damage. Now, one of my biggest criticisms with this is that there's no way for you to control where your abilities land. And I did find it frustrating that I did not even have an option to manually aim my attacks. I think that okay, I'm going to say something here. That doesn't feel good as a hardcore gamer. I don't like it. Now, I'm going to be adding a suggestion later in this video for cross-platform play. And if there's a chance that moco could be cross-platform play between console, PC, and mobile, then I'm actually okay with this, because manually aiming specific abilities on console is just not very intuitive and would feel weird and clunky. But if console's off the table and they're only planning on doing moco for PC and mobile, or mobile only, we need to be able to like manually move our abilities in some way, like please, especially if PvP is going to be super important in endgame, which it looks like it's going to be just based off of what it looks like in game. But you could take all that feedback and throw it out the window if they're planning on adding this game to console, because then it makes a lot of sense to have things really simple that works very easily on a controller. And I would love that. Honestly, my thumbs got pretty tired while I was playing moco, like actually like painful by the end of the day. A controller would be so nice. Anyway, let's circle back. The game is very easy to pick up. The auto aim in the game, even though you can't manually stuff, the auto aim is actually really good. Even the smart fireworks usually did the most damage. It wasn't always targeting everything that I wanted to. For the most part, like 98% of the time, it was just fine and great. So that's really awesome. And one thing that is really, really great about the fact that the auto aim abilities work so well is that pretty much anybody can pick up the game, no matter how much gaming experience they already have. In fact, even my 5-year-old daughter could pick it up and play with me. Not like the hardest bosses, but she could play a lot of the content in the game. And that is really exciting. I can't play Brawl Stars with her. It's too hard for her. I can barely play Brawl Stars with my wife. In fact, no, I can't. She does not have the gaming knowledge to be able to play Brawl Stars. But my wife could play moco because it's brainless. You don't have to think about it for like 95% of the gameplay, and that's really good. And also, it's really fun. I'm looking forward to being able to play moco with my daughters and being able to do raids together. I think that's going to be really, really cool. And eventually, we could even do some of the harder raids as long as I'm able to like carry her, you know? Like, I think that's really awesome. However, the easiness of the game is also one of my biggest criticisms for the game. I love playing games that give me a difficult boss that feels satisfying to overcome with skill and take some time to learn how to play around it. And I'm not the only person. This is why so many people enjoyed like the Dark Souls series, because it is challenging. And honestly, like, I'm just gonna say it, too many games these days just hold players' hands and never give up anything truly difficult. And when I say difficult, like, that's a weird thing to say, because like, yeah, they can just like increase the stats and make that like that's difficult, but it's not difficult in a fun way. The thing is, I want gameplay to feel satisfyingly difficult, and moco did not scratch that itch for me. And I think it's a really big shame that they didn't offer more difficult bosses and more difficult raids with more complex abilities and things that you have to do. Now, I'm not saying that there weren't hard challenges in moco, because there definitely were inside of raids and solo trials, but most of the difficult challenges really just came down to DPS tests, which I found very disappointing. Now, once I hit level 29 and was able to play raids 2, I was able to see the potential for the depth at the highest level, but I didn't experience truly hard content in a way that was really fun and satisfying. In fact, I was even able to clear the hardest raid in the beta on my first try, and my team and I did have some deaths, but we were able to beat it on our first try, even though only one of us had played it before. And like, the bosses just didn't offer a whole lot of depth in comparison to a lot of MMORPGs that I've played. And maybe it's because I've played so many MMORPGs. Maybe this is a me problem and not a moco problem. But if I'm going to play moco for years, which I know that Supercell, that's their whole goal, like this is something they got to do. Now, I'm actually totally fine with them leaving the difficulty just as easy as it was in the normal versions of each raid. But each raid and solo trial has 3 different difficulties: normal, hard, and nightmare. But the thing is, the only difference between these difficulties were the monster's HP and how much damage they did. Nightmare didn't require any more skill than normal, because all of the monsters just attacked the same exact way. Their mechanics were the same mobs actually spawned in. There was nothing different except that, oh, now this boss is just a little bit tankier and it's going to do a little bit more damage than you. So beating Nightmare really just came down to upgrading your gear most of the time, and that's boring. Now, I cannot pretend that skill played zero role in beating these harder challenges. Like, yes, Nightmare was harder than normal, and skill did make it better. But I'm convinced that the moco team could do something better. I just think they could. They could do some simple things, like they could swap out some of the mobs that spawn in on some of the raids and swap them out with stronger versions or different variants or something like that. Or they could add more of them. They could just do something other than just additional stats. Like, I still love being able to shred through a bunch of enemies, but maybe in Nightmare, there are so many enemies that my abilities can't keep up with them, even though I'm one-shotting all of them. Like, there's so many different things they could do. And when it comes to the bosses, they've got to have more abilities added. I really feel this way. I would love to see an additional ability added in Hard and a second additional ability added in Nightmare that just makes them less of a DPS test. In fact, decrease the amount of HP that they have. I'm fine with the increase in the damage that they do, so it's more about dodging skills. But somebody that has the gear to be able to beat normal should be able to beat Nightmare if they're insanely good at the game and just understand all the mechanics. Like, for real. Maybe not quite just as quickly, but I think you should be able to do that. I don't want it to just be about my gear being upgraded. I'm totally fine with gear being upgraded, making it easier in some way or another. But skill, I really feel like if we're in a game that celebrates PvE, skill in PvE should be more of a stress point. In fact, I think that a game should celebrate skill improvements of their players just as much as it celebrates power upgrades to your character. And the really awesome thing here is that while these are complaints that I have, and I really think that they need to do some improvements for it before the game's ready for global, the beta showed me that there is massive potential for depth in PvE. And this is only Raids 2. We have no idea what Raids 3 looks like. We have no idea what endgame content looks like. Maybe this type of depth that I'm really searching for will exist, and it won't all just be DPS tests. And also, I will say it's very important for a game to kind of hold their players' hands, at least in the beginning, because the harder that they make the game at the very, very beginning, the more likely people will just uninstall the game. You want to add that level of depth for the people who want that depth at a level where they can kind of handle that depth, at least to some extent. But I strongly feel that it should not take reaching max level to realize that the game will offer some fun challenges beyond just DPS tests. And that's something I would like to see improve before global. Okay, we got some more criticisms here. And this next one, this was very widely popular, I think. And that's how very little connection players have with their actual character. And I felt that. I really felt that. And this is coming from somebody who loves it when a game gives me overwhelming character customization. I don't know what it is about staring at a Chinese MMO's character customization and being able to like slightly adjust the cheek depth and height and the width and all of that stuff and like messing around with eyes and all that. I don't know what it is about that, but I love it. I have spent so many hours adjusting the looks of my character in other games. It's ridiculous, but it genuinely gives me a sense of connection with my character. And I don't think that moco needs to have overwhelming character customization like other games. I think there's a lot of value in making things pretty simple, but I like more variation. And I think that it's important because personally, I didn't feel at all connected with my moco character. One of the big reasons for it is the characters are kind of genderless. And I really appreciate them being gender inclusive by making the characters look like, you know, not inherently masculine or feminine, but because they didn't look strongly masculine or strongly feminine, it made me feel disassociated with my character. The character almost felt like sterile, if that makes sense. And I don't know about you guys, but when I'm playing an MMO, I either want to play a character that looks like myself, but sometimes I also want to play the complete opposite of what I look like, you know, and that could mean playing a character that looks like clearly feminine, or you know what, a character that actually does have some muscles on them, because we know that I'm not fooling anybody here. Moco characters kind of felt like in between and honestly lacking emotion or personal connection. A simple change that would go a long way would just be adding additional body types beyond the basic model. I'm sure that that would add a lot of work to whoever has to design clothes to look differently on different types of bodies and stuff like that. But I think that it would be worth it. I think that more variation would be incredibly helpful and would give a stronger sense of connection to people and their characters. In addition to more body types, I find myself very strongly wishing for more faces and hairstyles as well. I actually don't like wearing hats typically, and I didn't actually like a lot of the hats that were in the game. There were a couple that were okay, but I like the hair. I want more hair color variations, or not color. Well, yeah, color variations would be great, but more hairstyles would be great because honestly, there were like 2 that I really enjoyed, at least for the guys. There were some fun girl ones. Now, another common criticism that I heard was that there wasn't enough variation with the environments and the monsters. Now, I will say that I did love what we actually saw. The artwork was really amazing. I loved the environments. I really did. I also liked the mobs that were in the game, but it didn't take very long to realize that there were really only like 2 types of monsters and environments, right? There were the dragonlings and their environment, and then there was the beetles and their castle-themed environment. And beyond that, everything was pretty much a copy of what you had already seen. And now, I don't know how valid this criticism really... I mean, I think the criticism is valid, but I guess a better thing to say would be, I don't know what the right response to this criticism is. Like, maybe it's just fine and people want more variety, but maybe it's not worth the developer time. Maybe there's additional things that we would rather have in game rather than them focusing on adding different environments and different types of monsters. But I definitely did feel that it was a lot of the repeat of previous content by the time I reached level 29. But while farming the second set of raids, I will say I found a lot more types of mobs, which made me feel that this wasn't quite that big of a deal, especially because adding more variants early on would also mean finding a wider range of resources to upgrade your gear, but not enough of the ones that you need to upgrade your gear. So like, too much variation. There's a little bit of a balancing point that I don't know where the right point is, but maybe it's the right place now for moco, maybe it's not. Either way, I wanted to mention this because I did hear this feedback from a lot of people who wanted more types of monsters and more environments. Another criticism that I heard was a lack of storyline directive. And I do think that this needs to be addressed. I actually don't think that it necessarily needs like a full-blown story and cutscenes or dialogue and stuff like that. I know that is important to some people. It's typically important in MMOs, but I do think that the game needs something, even if they just do some little stuff in-game. In fact, it's kind of funny because while I feel like the game does give you a little bit of information of why you're hunting monsters, I actually learned more about the lore outside of the game on social media posts and stuff like that. And it's clear that they do have some sort of a story, but I hope that they can integrate it into the game, at least somewhere, a little bit more than it currently is. Despite all of those criticisms, though, I thoroughly enjoyed the game's progression experience. The big issue, though, is the fact that when MMORPGs like moco fail, it can be because of the progression system, but usually it has more to do with a satisfying end game experience. And that is my big concern for moco. Because once I reached max level and upgraded all of my weapons I cared about in the beta, I just straight up stopped playing. Now, I think that that's pretty much happened to everybody who also reached max level, and that's probably not a fair criticism, because a big reason for that was the fact that progression was going to be deleted, and we had already unlocked all of the gear. In fact, I didn't even finish upgrading my last equipment, the chicken stick that you get, because I knew it would be way too long for me to do it, and I knew the weapon actually wasn't very good, so I just didn't bother with it, because progression was going to get deleted, and eventually the chicken stick might work completely different when the game's actually released. And also, I will say, the beta ended at level 29, and max level in the actual game was at 50, I think. And so we didn't reach endgame. Even though it felt like we reached endgame, we never reached endgame. And they might have a solution for this. I don't know. But there needs to be something to do once you reach the max level and upgraded all of your equipment. Maybe that's PvP, like is hinted in the game at the very end of all the raids and stuff like that. But since the game is primarily a PvE game, I hope that there are satisfying endgame raids, challenges, solo trials, other PvE type content that are worth playing over and over and over again. Now, in my opinion, this needs to be the #1 issue that they have to address before the game can go global, because end game progression is so important. And the thing is about it is I'm saying this like it's a big serious thing, but I have no idea what their plan is. We have no idea. They haven't said anything. We didn't see end game. So they might have a solution, and maybe this concern is not actually a concern at all. Maybe they already have a plan. But the real question that I'm sure a lot of you guys are wanting the answer to is, when could we realistically see moco go global? And we have no idea. It could be next month if they already have endgame figured out. It could be 2 years from now. We have no idea how much content is actually in the game. Also, they may want to make a lot of changes based off of feedback from this beta. It's possible that they have way more content already prepped and they're ready for global soon. And at least that's what I'm hoping for, but I suspect it will be a while before the game goes global. Part of me hopes that this was just like a test to just be like, okay, we think the game's ready for global. We're just gonna put it out there, see what people think. Oh, people like it? Okay, we'll release it globally. That's what I hope for, but I suspect it will be a while before the game goes global. I think the game has insane potential, especially if they release it the right way. And the right way, like I mentioned earlier, I think is a multi-platform release. With how simple the controls are in moco, I don't see any reason why it couldn't work on console and PC on top of mobile, and for people to be able to play with people across any platform. The fact that Clash Royale and Clash of Clans recently announced official PC versions of their game tells me that it's actually not completely off Supercell's radar either. I have no idea how much additional time this would require for the moco team to do. I don't know. My non-developer brain tells me that, like, oh yeah, you already have the game, just put it on PC. Like, it's just like, ooh, just throw it on there. I'm sure it's way more complex than that. But if they could, at global, launch it across all platforms, I could see moco exploding in popularity. And maybe that's wishful thinking on my part. After all, I'm positioned to benefit greatly from a new global Supercell game. So maybe my opinion isn't the most accurate. And, you know, honestly, the fact that I love MMORPGs so much might also mean that I'm like, it's not accurate for me. There's just maybe it's just my brain's wired for them. I don't know. Either way, though, I genuinely mean it when I say that I thoroughly enjoyed playing the moco beta, and I cannot wait to play it again. I really, really love this game so much. I want it. I want it. Please, Supercell, make it happen. Either way, though, I want to know what you think. So drop a comment below letting me know whether you played it or not, whether or not you think the game will go global, any other thoughts you might have. For now, this is KairosTime ticking by. We'll see you, hopefully, in moco, and hopefully soon.